r/NoSleep. Posted by Reddit user Spike Goddess. I run a museum of cursed objects. I figured out what's going on with Courtney. I'm so sorry it took me so long to update. I know everyone was very supportive and worried, and I feel awful about leaving you hanging. Figuring out the situation at hand took a while. After my ordeal in the cabinet, I was unconscious, swimming in blackness and blissful unawareness. For a long, timeless moment, I wasn't thinking about my mother's, or Courtney, or the danger Em was undoubtedly in. I was just content. The silence around me didn't press in, oppressive. I floated in it, light and unafraid. Alex! Em's voice cut through the haze, and all the pain and the fear and the anger returned. I gasped in a heaving breath, oxygen rushing to my head like pure adrenaline. I shot upright and opened my eyes, then immediately squeezed them shut again, wincing at the bright lights that pierced them and gave me an instant headache. Warm, rough hands touched my arms, tentatively at first and then firmly. Alex, Em's voice whispered in my ear. Alex, you're okay. It's okay. Em, I said, my voice rasping from my throat like notes forced into a rusty old trumpet. Are you alright? I'm fine, she assured me. There was blood in her hair and dripping down from her cheek. It looked like she'd been cut on the forehead. It bled a lot, but it looked shallow. I believed her and breathed out a great sigh of relief. Talons clacked on the floor as the crow landed lightly. Once again, old and decrepit, feathers streaked with gray and white. Looking at him, I shivered, remembering the raw power he had displayed in the cabinet. Truth be told, I'm glad he's on my side, even if I'm not 100% sure what he even is. Whatever he is, he's among the most powerful things in my museum. But, like I said, I don't really do animals. Not my area of expertise. Doesn't mean I can't have the occasional crow friend, though. I forced myself upright on my arms that felt like jelly. Em helped to steady me, murmuring comfort, little meaningless noises that soothed my aching senses nonetheless. A quick glance around the room told me that the museum was empty now. I craned my neck. Behind me sat the cabinet, doors closed, innocently. How long? I cleared my throat uncomfortably. How long was I gone? Em shook her head. You disappeared and I couldn't even think, but I knew I wasn't supposed to open the cabinet, so I couldn't. But then I heard from inside a voice calling for me to open the door. My voice? I asked suspiciously. I couldn't recall if I'd called for her or not. Em shook her head, eyes wet. No, not a human voice at all, I think. It didn't sound right, but I could tell what it was saying anyway. I opened the cabinet and there you were. Beside me, the crow preened its feathers nonchalantly. How long? I repeated gently. Em shook her head again. I hated having to essentially interrogate her after everything, but our troubles were far from over. Maybe a half hour, she whispered. Where's Courtney? I demanded instantly. Em looked confused. I remembered a bit late that she hadn't seen Courtney go into the basement, Although, it wasn't like she didn't have a reason enough to be suspicious anyway. "It's important, babe," I urged. Em bit her lip, a habit that I try to remind her not to partake in. She always ended up with a bleeding lip if she wasn't careful. Not that I can complain. I'm a notorious nail biter when I'm stressed. "A few minutes after you went in, she arrived and ushered everyone out," she responded slowly, thoughtfully. "She followed the last of them out, I think. Said she was going to make sure everyone was all right." I scoffed at the thought of anyone in this museum being all right, but my mind was racing. "Did Courtney have anything with her?" Em's face turned grim. "Nothing visible. Why?" When I didn't answer, her expression darkened further, turning into something deadly and serious and beautiful. "What did she take, Alex?" I pushed myself to my feet. Both Em and the crow squawked in protest. I wobbled, my head spinning, the light shining too bright against the linoleum floor. "I've got to find her, Em," I said. "She's been after something this whole time. Something in the basement. And when I was in the closet, I saw..." I hesitated, then glanced down at Em's hand, which still rested on my arm, and realized she already knew. "I think she might have taken the object." "I'm coming with, obviously," huffed Em, her strong voice not betraying a hint of unease I knew she must have felt. I started towards the basement, each footstep a painfully sharp sound in my sensitive ears. "You know, someone has to watch the museum, Em," I replied, although my heart urged me to take her with me. "Safe," it insisted. "If someone's not here to turn the hourglass, to rewind the VHS, to get the cabinet locked back up..." I paused, then sighed. "I need somewhere safe to come back to." Em followed me into the long hallway, silent. This, I knew, was her version of agreement. The door to the basement was shut neatly now. I wasn't sure why Courtney had bothered with that. Guilty conscience, I suppose, because there was no way she could have any illusion that we might not know what she'd done. I pushed the door open. The basement was dark and dusty. I flicked the switch on the wall, and the lights came unwillingly to life, flickering and weak, making a buzzing sound of upset as they did. The room washed in new light. It was mostly cardboard boxes, things from my old home. In the glass cases, preserved from my mother's house, lay a few artifacts, those that were either too dangerous to be displayed, or those for which I haven't established clear-cut enough rules for, to feel confident enough displaying them safely. I motioned for Em to follow me with a small jerk of my head, and she did. We passed the pebble with its little rhyme, which could turn blood into water and water into blood, and then the old gumball machine whose gum was the most delicious in the world, but would doom the user to chew the same piece of gum endlessly, forever. We found it because some idiot thought maybe chewing more of the gum would somehow cure him of the curse. He ended up with a mouth so full of gum that it clogged his throat and plugged even his sinus cavity, leaving him to suffocate. Good times. That one, by the way, mostly isn't on display because I don't think children would have the willpower to not try and steal one of the gumballs. And I don't want that on my conscience. I doubt even locking it in a room like the Nokia room would stop them from getting their tiny little hands on it. We reached the case where the object was supposed to sit, innocuous and still. I wasn't surprised to find it empty, but my stomach still sunk, churning with dread. M's hand was in mine, I realized. I didn't know when that happened, but I was grateful for it. It grounded me, just as the crow talons on my shoulder did. "M," I said hesitantly, reluctantly, but she didn't make me ask. "I'll do it," she said. Her hand slipped from mine. She'd never touched the object, as there was no way that would be safe or healthy for her. I'd hoped that touching the glass would give her more of a read of Courtney instead of the necklace, but I couldn't be sure. I stood close behind her, my hands ready to steady her should she falter. Her hands made contact with the glass, and she shuddered, eyes slipping closed. I watched her closely, anxious. After what felt like an eternity, she opened her eyes and turned to me. All I could read on her face was sadness. "M?" The hotel M said I'd find Courtney in was a sight to see. The Hotel Lux or something to that effect. I don't know. I had other things on my mind. Even so, I couldn't help but ogle a bit at the grand sweeping arches that towered over rich crimson carpets, fine velvet upholstery, accents of platinum and gold threaded throughout the darker colors and glinting in the light of dozens of chandeliers. Stepping inside my dark jeans and too small flannel shirt, I felt instantly out of place. One glance at the lavishly dressed patrons lounging in the lobby confirmed that feeling. A single night's stay there probably would cost more than a month's payment on the whole museum. Hey, even with the magical Nokia money, space here is expensive. I couldn't imagine Courtney here, out of all places. She was so down to earth, so level-headed. I imagined her in one of those silken gowns I saw around me, sash in place around her waist, hair piled high on her head. I couldn't help but snicker. Just a little one, though. A real little one, because I knew that as bright and as rich as this place seemed, unbelievable horror lurked here too. Somewhere within this grand building lurked my most hated enemy, the cursed object that took my mothers away from me. There was something else too, something so dark I could feel it stepped through the air, permeating my skin, settling in the spongy, cavernous tissue of my bones, curling up there, seething quietly like poison. Cursed energy, I thought, the angry kind, the kind I'd never felt from the object before. So what the hell was it? M had told me pretty precisely where to find Courtney. I marched down the hallway with purpose, determinedly ignoring any scrutinizing stares the well-dressed receptionist threw my way, as though they didn't immensely bother me. This was ridiculous. Of course, they very much did. Through the set of swinging doors, down a lush red hallway, my foot seemed to sink further into the carpet with every step. It was nice at first, soft, like memory foam. Soon, it felt like quicksand, pulling me into the earth where I knew I'd remain. Like the man who hadn't kissed the dog on the nose, like the thief, like so many who'd reaped the dark rewards of the Nokia phone. And like my mother's, I tried not to think. I approached the ballroom cautiously, my footsteps slowing to a cautious creep. I would have thought myself ridiculous if malice in the air weren't so stifling, if I weren't so afraid of what was I going to have to do. "Alexis," Emily had warned me. "Curses aren't subtle. You have no idea how it will judge you." I swallowed hard and forced my feet to keep moving. From inside the ballroom, I could hear music. I let it soothe me for a moment. I followed the soaring violin melodies, the steady thrum of the cello, the soothing plucking of the stand-up bass. Then, I pushed open the double doors. The music swelled around me, accompanying the growing din of laughter and the clinking of glasses as I entered. Around me stood a great number of people, all wearing fine clothing, whether suits or gowns. A couple glanced my way when I entered, giving me a searching look up and down, and looked away, apparently deciding me not to be worth their while. This was a relief, as I was becoming accurately aware how out of place I was in my present attire. I glanced around looking for Courtney, or her target. I spotted the latter, almost instantly, as Em had described him well. A portly man, short and squat, with an old-fashioned brown mustache and deep-set blue eyes that pierced mine even from across the room. He chortled loudly, and one of the most nervous-looking women on his arms tittered vacantly. Most recognizable were his bright crimson gloves, one on each hand, over top of which he wore 3 ornate golden rings, each set with different richly colored gems. Courtney had to be near to this man. Then all at once, my searching eyes found her. I was sure my eyes had roamed over her without recognizing her. She hardly looked herself. She was dressed in dark, neat clothes and a bow tie, white gloves on her hands, and her hair tied back into a neat, prim bun. She carried a tray, upon which rested several champagne glasses. She balanced it deftly, as though she practiced, never spilling a drop, as she navigated through the drunken guests easily. In her other hand, she clutched a small object, hidden in the folds of her pristine white cloth. She met my eyes, and hers widened in shock and fear. She turned towards the man, and I knew what she was going to do, even before she started running. "Courtney!" I screamed, abandoning any pretense of going unnoticed here as I broke into a dead sprint. She was too far ahead of me, too nimble, too quick. "Courtney!" I shouted again, desperate. "Courtney, please!" She didn't waver, didn't flinch. I already knew the answer, but I yelled one thing and I hoped she'd make her pause. "Courtney, why?" She had almost reached the man, but she turned at that, eyes wild and red-rimmed, tears dripping steadily down her reddening face. "Why?" she screamed. Her voice wasn't a human one, then. It was animalistic, bestial, constructed of pain and rage and adrenaline. "This bastard killed my family, that's why." Her shout silenced the entire ballroom. Faces turned towards us, intrigued and apprehensive. Courtney stood there, shoulders shaking. The miasma of hatred grew, thickened. I felt my heartbeat quicken, the way an observer might watch an overturned beetle hasten its struggles, remotely, detachedly. "He needs his money, and he needs his women, and he needs his fancy manner," sneered Courtney, dropping the tray to the ground. She didn't look back at the glass shattering on the floor with a deafening clash of glass on the hard wood. "Needs them so bad, he'll evict people from their homes without a second thought. So bad he'll ruin their livelihood for an extra cent. So bad he'll have them removed if they get in his way." She turned back to the man, who trembled. His small hands yanked 2 of the nervous women in front of him, and they shrieked in terror. Courtney ignored them, dismissed them with a glance. "See, this is who he is, and this is going to show the world." My stomach sunk as she unfolded the white cloth, revealing the necklace, the simple silver chain, and the elegant pearl. At once, I felt a sort of pull to it, my muscles moving me towards it against my will. It reminded me eerily of my time in the cabinet with the knot, and I resisted, managing to only slow my steps.